My name is Anna, and I am 55 years old. I live in a quiet town in Ohio with my husband, Michael. We've been married for 32 years, and while our life has never been extravagant, it has always been steady. We raised 2 children who are now grown and living their own lives. Most days, it's just Michael and me in our peaceful home, surrounded by the echoes of laughter that once filled the halls. Michael works part-time now, helping a local hardware store manage supplies. I spend my days tending to the garden, reading, and occasionally volunteering at the community center. It's a quiet rhythm of life, one I've grown comfortable with. But comfort can sometimes turn into monotony, and lately, I had been feeling that silent emptiness that comes when the noise of family fades away. One Thursday afternoon, as I was wiping the counter after lunch, Michael came in with a small smile. "You'll never guess who I ran into today," he said, excitement flickering in his eyes. James. It took me a second to recall the name. James Patterson, Michael's best friend from college. They were inseparable once, but life had drifted them apart. James. Oh, I remember him. How is he? I asked, drying my hands. He's doing well, Michael replied. Retired now. Said he was traveling cross-country in his camper. I invited him to stop by for the weekend. At first, I hesitated. It had been decades since I'd last seen James, and though I trusted Michael's judgment, the idea of hosting someone after so long felt a little unsettling. But I smiled. Of course, it'll be nice to see him again. The following 2 days were spent cleaning the guest room, changing sheets, and baking pies, the kind James used to love back in their college days, or so Michael remembered. There was a strange excitement in the air, like we were expecting family. Saturday morning, a knock echoed through the house. Michael rushed to open the door, and there he was, James, standing with a gentle grin, holding a small suitcase. He looked older, his hair now silver, but his eyes held that same spark I remembered from years ago. Anna, it's been too long, he said, extending his hand. I took it, smiling. It really has. Welcome home. The first evening was filled with laughter and old memories. The three of us sat around the dining table, sharing stories of their college adventures. James had a way of making people feel at ease. His humor was warm, his words full of life. For the first time in a long while, I saw Michael truly laugh, the deep, hearty kind that came from his soul. Later that night, as I cleared the table, I caught myself smiling. It felt good to have energy in the house again. When Michael excused himself to take a phone call, James stayed back, flipping through the old photo album that lay on the coffee table. You two were something, he said, laughing at a picture from our wedding day. I still remember the way he looked at you. Like you were his whole world. I felt a warmth rise to my cheeks. He still does, I replied softly, though in my heart, I wondered if that same spark still existed. Marriage changes over time, not worse, just different. The passion becomes comfort, and the rush becomes routine. The next morning, the air smelled of rain. I stepped outside to check on the garden, only to find the wooden fence leaning awkwardly. James appeared behind me, holding a hammer. Looks like you could use a hand, he said. Together, we worked in silence for a while. He shared stories about his travels, mountains he'd climbed, strangers he'd met, lessons he'd learned. There was something grounding about his perspective. Life doesn't stop teaching, even when you think you've learned enough, he said. Sometimes, the hardest part is realizing we've stopped listening. His words lingered in my mind long after he'd gone inside. That afternoon, Michael and James watched a game together, their laughter echoing through the living room. I found myself sitting on the porch, listening to the rain tap gently on the roof. As the days passed, I noticed changes, not in James, but in Michael. He started waking up earlier, helping me in the kitchen, asking me about my day more often. It was as if having his old friend around reminded him of who he used to be, the spontaneous, loving man I'd fallen in love with. On the third night, we all sat by the fireplace. The flames danced softly, casting shadows on the walls. James turned to me and said, Anna, you know, you're lucky. Some people never find a love that lasts this long. I looked at Michael, who smiled back at me. I know, I whispered. I just forgot for a little while. James nodded knowingly. Happens to all of us. The trick is remembering before it's too late. The next morning, I found a small note on the kitchen counter. It was from James. Thank you for reminding me what home feels like. He left early, before sunrise, leaving only the scent of coffee and the memory of laughter. As his camper disappeared down the road, I felt a pang of sadness but also peace. That evening, Michael took my hand. You know, having him here made me realize how much I've taken for granted, he said. You've been my constant, Anna. I don't say it enough, but I still love you the same way I did back then. I smiled, tears warming my eyes. And I love you too. We sat on the porch, watching the sky turn gold. Life, I realized, wasn't about grand gestures or perfect days. It was about the quiet moments, fixing a fence together, sharing a laugh, holding hands after years of storms. Weeks passed, and everything slowly returned to normal, but something within me had shifted. The house didn't feel empty anymore. The silence now felt peaceful, not lonely. Sometimes, I catch myself looking at the photo of the three of us, me, Michael, and James, smiling together on that last morning. And I think about how people come into our lives, not always to stay, but to remind us of what matters most. Love isn't something you find once, it's something you choose every single day, even after decades. And sometimes, it takes an old friend's visit to help you remember. My name is Anna. I'm 55 years old, still married to the same man I fell in love with 32 years ago. And now, more than ever, I know that love, true love, doesn't fade. It only deepens when you let it.